Welcome back, all my boredom busters, and hello to all you new hobby hunters. I am your host, Brad Claybaugh, and this is Brad's Boredom Busters. This is the channel that explores all kinds of arts and crafts, so if you're looking for something new to do, this is the channel for you. So the project we're going to be exploring today is an art quilt. Hey, before we get started on this though, hey Buster, show these fine people what to do if they want to subscribe to our channel. Take it away, Buster. Hey, nice job, Buster. Thank you very much for that. Let's take a look at the quilt and then talk about the process that we're going to be going through, and then we'll come back to the work table and get started on it all. The quilt that you saw at the beginning of this video, I call that my humanity quilt. And so today I am going to show you how to make one of the blocks in that humanity quilt. It'll be the finger peace sign. So the background on that block is a tie-dye t-shirt. So I'll show you how to stabilize it. I'll show you how to make the finger peace sign applique to put on that t-shirt. I'm also going to add some lettering to it as well, and so you'll see that. I'll show you how to put sashing around it, and I'll even put on some cornerstones. Then I'll show you how to make the quilt sandwich and how to quilt it, and then we'll bind it, and then we'll put the hanging loops on the top. And then as a bonus, I'll show you how to take the same block and make an accent pillow with it. Because this project is rather involved, and I don't want the video to be too lengthy, so I'll probably break it up into at least 2 parts. So let's explore this project together and take you on a journey of art quilts. All right, let's get started. All right, Buster, so this is the t-shirt that I am going to use for this project. Colorful, and considering I'm going to be putting the black finger peace sign on it and some black lettering, that'll show up really well on this bright yellow, orange, and reddish rusty color. Yeah, so this will work really well for the background. So like I say, this is a great project. If you have a tie-dye shirt that didn't come out exactly the way you want, you really don't like to wear it just because you're not that proud of it. But once you're done with this project, you're going to make something that you'll be very proud of, and then you'll be happy to hang it on the wall, and you had made it 100% your own. So like I said, I am just going to demonstrate how to make one block out of my entire humanity quilt. You can take the methods that I am going to show you in this video and replicate that for as many blocks as you'd like to make, and then you can put them together however you want to make as big a wall quilt as you like. And so now I will demonstrate how to do what I call filleting a t-shirt. And so I demonstrated this once before in my first rag rug video. If you haven't seen that, go and check that out. But it's really simple. You basically need your cutting mat, a rolling cutter, and just go up the side. This t-shirt doesn't have any seams on the side, but just even it out and go and split that side seam or fold. And then get up to the sleeve and find where that seam is and cut on the inside of that. Now repeat that for the second side. Your next step would be taking it apart at the top. Try to keep my big old head out of the way. That's that. And then go down to the bottom and remove the hem that is at the bottom of your shirt. Okay, there's that. Now flip that over, remove the back, set that aside, and then get in here and just cut the collar out. So that gives you your basic material to create your background for this block. And because I made this shirt symmetrical where the front and the back are identical, I mentioned I'm going to be making a throw pillow as well. So the front can be for the quilt and the back I can make for the pillow. So I have plenty of material. All right, so the next step would be cutting this down to the size for the block. I'm going to be making the finished block with its sashing and borders, and the binding will be 18 inches. I'll calculate the size of the sashing and borders and then subtract that from this piece to find out how big I want to cut this. So my finished project will be 18 inches. Okay, I'll get back to you here shortly as soon as I figure out my size. All right, all my fine fellows and gals. So I've got this figured out. I'll show you kind of my little sketch here. Get it into the camera. There you go. All right, so what I am going to do is I'm going to have outside borders that are 2.5 inches wide. I'll have another piece of sashing that's 1 inch wide. And then the inside, where that's going to be the t-shirt area, that'll be 11 inches. And so if you're not aware of, or if you're not very familiar with sewing techniques, especially with quilting, most quilt blocks and pieces are sewn together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So even though the outside borders are going to finish at 2.5 inches, we want to cut our pieces at 2 3/4 inches. Sashing around the t-shirt, that will be 1 inch, but because it gets a 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides, then we cut that at 1.5 inches. And so after calculating the widths of the borders and the sashing, and that means the center that I need to cut out for this block will be 11 inches. And so the 11 inches plus the 7 inches gives me the total of 18 inches. And so I am going to find my center and then come out. So I create a square of 11.5 inches. So let me get my tools for that and we'll get right to it. The next thing we need to do before we cut the shirt to our sewing size, we need to prepare a piece of interfacing. This is a fusible interfacing. And this particular interfacing is from a company called Pilon, and it is their fusible mid-weight interfacing. So one quick mention, when you buy your interfacing, they usually come with these paper sheets like this that have the instructions on it. So follow the manufacturer's instructions on the brand that you purchase and you'll have no problems. And if you feel it, you have a smooth side and then a bumpy side. And if you look, there's like little bitty dots on the rough side. That's the fusible adhesive that will go on the back of our t-shirt. Okay, so at this time I am going to cut my interfacing a little oversized. My square ruler is a 12.5 inch square ruler, which is a perfect size because the size I want to cut my t-shirt material to is 11.5. This gives me a piece that's a little bit larger than what I'm going to cut. So when I trim around the t-shirt, it'll have the fusible interfacing everywhere. And so the interfacing is to help stabilize the knit t-shirt material so it's easier to handle and it reacts the same as, say, some cotton fabric that you may be using. So there's my interfacing. So that's all we need of that. Now we can set up the ironing board and iron on the interfacing. Okay, gang, so now I've got the interfacing cut. So take your t-shirt, and most t-shirts, if you flip it one way or the other, it's not going to really matter. But if you can still remember which is the inside and which is the outside, put the outside down. Take your interfacing, and what I like to do, just because that way I know I want to center it in this pattern, and I have a very close representation of the middle of the pattern right here. So take your interfacing, fold it in half, and kind of crease it near the middle. Fold it in half again, and then give that another crease. That just gives you a pretty good indication of where the middle of your interfacing is. So take it, and we said there was a smooth side and a rough side. Put the rough side down because that is your glue. And then center that on your pattern on the t-shirt as best you can. And then with a hot dry iron, we don't need steam on this, just press and move it, press and move it, just to glue down the interfacing. Okay, that should do it. Okay, we'll let that cool off for a minute. Okay, so now our interfacing is cooled off, so we're back down on our cutting mat. So still with your t-shirt face down with the fusible interfacing facing up, now we can cut this to size. And so as I said, I am cutting this to 11.5 inches. So half of 11.5 is 5 3/4. I want to lay out the ruler with the 5 3/4 mark and 5 3/4 here, which is there. And I want that point to be dead center on my t-shirt. And then I also want to try to line up that 3/4 line to any indication of the center line of the shirt. I've got marks down here and a mark here on the pattern that kind of makes it look like a center line. So I want to line up to that. Okay, this edge and this edge is our first cut. Now these pieces that you're cutting off, you could save those and make strips out of them and use that on a rag rug project that we did a video of here a little while back. You can check that out. All right, turn that around. So now we've got, this is a true corner. So now what you want to do is take your ruler, and like I said, we're cutting a 11.5-inch block. So line up your 11.5-inch mark here, the corner here and here, like that. And then this is your cut. Then I will have an 11.5-inch piece ready for the rest of the project. All right, there we go. Okay, buddies, so now I'm on to cutting our sashing material. This is going to be that 1-inch little border around the t-shirt. And so I am going to cut that with my 6x24 quilting ruler. But this piece is longer than 24. So what I'm going to do is fold it in half. And now this left hand edge, this fabric is from my own stash. And so I ironed out the wrinkles. And so you want to make sure you iron everything out well before you start cutting. On the last project I did using this is a good edge. So this strip will get cut at 1.5 inches. And so I will take the 1.5 inch mark, lay it along this good edge. And also this edge is a good edge, so you can line up on the bottom as well as along this edge, and that way you know you're true. I will take my little weight cheater to help hold that so it doesn't slide around. And now these strips are going to be longer than what I actually need to go around the t-shirt block, but I will show you why I like to leave it long, and we will deal with that after we get it sewn on. And so just keep cutting strips off, as many as we need. I actually need 8. I need 4 for the wall hanging and 4 for the pillow. I'm going to say a good way to double check yourself, making sure you're still cutting true, is if you're hitting all the marks along the ruler, but then where your fold is actually a true 90 degrees. So you can line up there as well, and you know that you're cutting good and true. Okay, so I have my 8 strips for the 2 projects. And now the cornerstones on this project are also going to be black, so I will cut that at this time. And the cornerstones are going to be the same size as the border. And our border is going to be 2.5 finish, but we need 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that means we cut it at 2 3/4. And so I will cut 1 strip at 2 3/4, and I should be able to get 8 cornerstones out of this piece easily. All right there. Okay, that's our cornerstone piece. And so now we can actually cut the 8 strips I need for the borders around both projects. And so let's get that material ready and then we'll cut that up. Okay, so this is the fabric I'm going to use for the border. It's a leftover piece of ombre fabric that I used on a previous project of mine. So I just want to iron out these wrinkles. You always want to make sure you iron out any folds or wrinkles you have, so when you cut it, your fabric is as flat as it possibly can be at that time. There we go. Get that with some steam. So that's all the border pieces. So seeing we're cutting, we might as well cut our cornerstones. So lay that out. And I still have this piece folded in half, so I'm cutting 2 at a time. So here again, we want this to be 2 3/4. Okay, so that's all our pieces cut. So our next step now is going to the sewing machine and we'll sew all this together. Then once we get the finished block done, then we can create our applique and apply that to the center on the t-shirt. Okay, Busters, so we're here at the sewing table ready to start piecing our block together. So I said before to just leave these strips long and I would show you how we were going to deal with them. We didn't have to make any exact measurements. And so I'll show you that. This is our 1.5 inch strip. And so we're using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I have a 1/4 inch foot on my sewing machine with a side guide built into it. So take your first strip and with your tie-dye shirt face up, then in my case I'm using a solid, which is the same on both sides. But if you were using a patterned strip, it would be faces together. So you'd want your strip face down with your tie-dye face up. And then we're just going to stitch along here 1/4 inch. So now I'll show you how we can deal with the long ends. Just take your ruler, line that up to the edge of the block. Now in my case, that strip is long enough so I can use that for the other side. So here again, lay that out along the edge. Stitch that. Same thing again. Okay, and then we just want to take this and iron that over. Two sides. Now we take another strip. And then line that up along the edge. And let that run wild again. And then we stitch that on. And bring that over here. Trim the excess off of this one. And this time you'll line up to your first piece of sashing, so that lines up. That makes a nice square corner then. Flip that around. See, with this method, then it saves you from doing a lot of extra calculating and measuring and cutting. It's just, you make your piece a little bit long and stitch it on and then just trim it to the edge. That way you end up with a nice, tight piece of work and you haven't had to do a lot of extra calculating to get there. So we can take the remnant from that strip and put it on here and stitch this one on. Okay. All right, so there you go. So with that method, like I say, you avoid a lot of measuring to fit. You just sew a little bit wild and then cut it to fit. And you end up with a nice square sub block. Okay, so now that we've got that inner sashing done, now the next step is putting on our outside border. This we're going to do in a very similar method. So we will start on the same side. When I start on these, I like to sew on the sides first and then add the top and bottom afterward. So this will go on our first side. And I had cut these pieces just a little long as well. So put that on there so you have equal amounts hanging over the top and the bottom. And then this gets sewn also with our 1/4 inch seam allowance. And for my project, because the borders here are ombre, which means it goes kind of a gradation from dark to light, I am making sure that my darks and lights kind of run in a circle. So whereas I finish with light here, I'm starting with dark on the other side. And you'll see the effect that that has when we're finished and get this all ironed out. Okay, so now before we put on our next piece, now we need to also attach our cornerstones. And these are our cornerstones that we made, the little square blocks. So this is as far as we are now on our blocks. So now to calculate, we do have to cut the next piece ahead of time and sew on the cornerstones on either end. So measure from your seam to seam, and we are just shy of 13 inches. And so we want to add 1/4 inch for each seam allowance. So we will be just cutting this just under 13.5. Let's double check the other side for the other. And it is the same, so we can cut them both. So we can stack these together. Had to get a shorter ruler so I could get it on the table here. All right, so we are going to be just shy of 13.5. So take your ruler, put your whatever dimension your cut has to be, line that up underneath the ruler, and then line up one edge along the top of your strip, and that gives me what my cutoff needs to be. Okay. So that should give us our accurate piece. So then what we do is take the cornerstone and put that, one of those, we're going to sew one on this end and one on the other end. So let's get that done. And actually we can chain piece that. Chain piecing is when you have a series of the same assembly to do. You can just do them at the same time without cutting the thread. Just keep feeding it under your presser foot. So like I say, we're running from dark to light, so we're going to do the same, go from dark to light. So take that and fold that over face down. Match up your seams on the where the cornerstones come together on your strip. Okay, flip that around, get the next one on, and make sure that we're still going from dark to light. Flip that over. The basic foundation of our block that we're working on. So our next step will be creating the appliques to go in the center. I'll show you how to set up the pattern for our applique. All right, all my buster buddies. So this has been a great project so far. It's turning out just the way I'd like it to. I hope you're learning something new on this one. So on our next video, as I said, we're going to be working on the applique. I'll create the lettering and show you how to transfer the finger peace sign pattern to the pattern paper. And then we'll get all that transferred to the fabric and cut out. And then we'll get that ironed on. And we'll even do quilting on the wall hanging block and also on the throw pillow form. So come back for the second part of our humanity wall hanging quilt and pillow form. And don't forget, buddies, peace out, we love you, and go bust out some art.